Hi again, this is Professor Innes, and you are now on Module 3 of your Introduction to Philosophy course, the Classics of Western Philosophy, and we are still discussing ethics. And we've got to keep in mind all the way through the discussion of ethics that we're not here necessarily to prescribe the right or wrong thing to do. All we're doing as philosophers is looking at the different arguments, the different notions of the good, and evaluating them to see if they would work. Because as philosophers, we're not here to say here that something is either good or bad, or the best or the good. We just evaluate them. And by doing that, we'll say, is it the case that previously Aristotle's notion of virtue, and his prescription, because he did prescribe, his prescription for gaining the good life would in fact work? Can we really be happy? Is this notion that we're all going to be accomplished in our daily activities, in our relationships, everything we do, and at the end of the day be successful, therefore happy? Is it possible that we are able to control our everyday urges and peculiar wants and desires which do not make us happy? So that's a critique of Aristotle's notion of virtue arriving at happiness. Now, this week we're on to Kant, and Kant is one of the modern philosophers. So in that sense, with his notion of modernity and his consideration of achieving a moral action, a successful moral action, we are seeing him as somebody setting up a more, dare we say, scientific, I don't like the word scientific here, but a more methodological structure to extract the given moral concern from its context and then analyze that moral concern and then make a decision. With Aristotle and Epicurus, and the Greek philosophers dealing with morals, they were talking about the overall life considerations. Every act aims towards a given end, namely happiness or pleasure. So with the moderns, what we have is quite clearly a consideration that they're extracting the consideration from its context and then analyzing it. And again, the intention here is to be objective. Therefore, when one makes a moral claim or conducts a moral act, the person is more or less, or hopefully more, certain that the act is going to be reasonable. So I'll be more clear about this with an example with Kant. With Kant, if one says that stealing is wrong, then all acts of stealing are wrong. We're not going to one day say, okay, right, I actually need this money, and I found it on the side of the road, so I'm going to take it today. I think it's acceptable. I take this money. Now, if you've previously said that stealing is wrong, then you've got to think, is this money yours? Is it yours to spend? And what happened? What do we call it when we spend other people's money? Well, we call it stealing. So that's probably an act of stealing if you take some money you found on the side of the road and spend it on yourself. So one has to be constantly aware of which category you have placed given acts, and if that act is in fact something which you avoid, or in other cases it might be something you do. So one is constantly being vigilant about one's acts. With Kant in particular, you set up your prescription beforehand within the categorical imperative. You set it up. I say killing is wrong. Yes, I think it's a reasonable thing to avoid. Stealing is wrong. Yes, that's reasonable to avoid, and so forth and so on. And you sort of program yourself. It's a sort of self-programming. This is why it's respecting autonomy, because it's you making the choice. Nobody else is doing it. You are the one programming yourself. So it's a sense of continuous direction of autonomy. So one may think that the categorical imperative is somewhat I don't know, authoritarian? Well, as far as Kant is concerned, it's not, because you're the one making the choice. So it is, in fact, an act of freedom, whereby you choose these things and you act upon them. And by acting upon them, it makes you a moral person. So that's basically Kant's argument. And it's duty-bound. One carries out one's duty once one has set up the categorical imperative. And after which we respect autonomy. And here we treat each person as an equal, in the sense that nobody is set aside and seen as not being included within the categorical imperative. So if I say that all people should be treated to an education, for example, excuse me, everybody should have an education, then everybody should have an education. I'm not going to start saying now that, okay, right, people from Meridian can't have an education because I don't know, I drove there once and the shops were shut, so I don't like Meridians anymore. So in that sense, that would be unreasonable to say that people from Meridian cannot have an education. Again, it was a silly reason, but you know that people do have reasons for discriminating against people. So but they are unreasonable reasons for doing so. So at the end of the day, you cannot exclude these people because they are members of humanity. And you've said so. I mean, it's the case here. We treat all people as equals. They're people, therefore they're treated equally. You can't come up with reasons for why they can't be treated equally because it's unreasonable to do so. Right, so that is Kant. And this is a very strict argument, and rightfully so, says Kant, because if we allow ourselves our own consequential considerations in saying here that I can't tell the truth anymore because it leads towards more trouble, or I don't like meridians, things like that. If we allow those things to get in the way, then we end up in this really hodgepodge of relativism, which is no morality at all. So this is a very strict prescription. The categorical imperative is very strict, and rightfully so, says Kant. It's to make us moral and stick on that moral high ground, as we might call it. So hopefully you'll enjoy the reading. Please remember to do both sections and do the answers on both sections, please. And also, in general, read my comments. It's important to read these comments because I often say things which are particular to each student, and it will do you good to take notes because then you're more successful later on. So please read the comments. Okay, right, I think that will do for now with Immanuel Kant. And I think I said it was Module 3 at the beginning. It's in fact Module 4, so I apologize for that. Right, okay, I think that's everything, and you've got everything you need. So let me know if you do need anything at all, and I'll deal with it accordingly. Okay, thanks a lot, and speak to you soon. Bye-bye.